This is the business culture of agriculture. My name is Andy Junkin, and with me tonight is Crystal Schuanaman. She's from NDSU, and she's been part of a team that's designed a program called Design Your Succession Plan, which is a 9-hour curriculum program held over 3 nights. And she's just, I guess you'd say, not officially, well, this could be the official launch of this program out of the state. And I'm really excited about having her on the show tonight. She's hilarious as well. So welcome to the show, Crystal.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be on tonight.
Appreciate that. I've been looking forward to having you on all week, actually. So tell me about the program and what it's about.
So NDSU Extension designed a program called Design Your Succession Plan. And the reason we designed this program was we've been having farm and ranch transition workshops in the state for many years, probably 10, 12 years or more. And what we were finding was we were not really utilizing the strengths of our extension agents, our family consumer science agents, our ag agents. They weren't really working together. And we felt like that was something that we could do a little bit better. So we really decided to put together a program where we utilized agents more than just opening the door, pouring coffee, and facilitating in other professionals. We were really just bringing in, attorneys, CPAs, tax people. We were bringing them in, and they were talking to people, and they were giving people all the nuts and bolts and the tools that you generally pay for. But people were going home and they weren't doing anything with that because they didn't know how to have a conversation yet. So that's a problem. We had these great workshops, but people weren't doing anything with them. So we sat down and we decided to redesign how we were doing farm and ranch succession planning here in North Dakota. And we came up with a program called Design Your Succession Plan. And like you said, it's about 9 hours of curriculum, and it's kind of divided up between education and then small group activities and then workbook activities as well. We actually have a great workbook. I'll just hold that up. It's part of the program that people pay to attend, and then they get the workbook as well, and a whole binder full of other information and resources. But we really designed the workbook to be something that they could leave on their countertop. They start working in it during the class, actually, and then they can leave it on the counter. They can fill it out. It's just a really great piece that goes along with our educational curriculum. And so we actually have that available now for people to purchase. So if you've ever looked for resources online, there's a ton of resources out there, extension materials throughout the country, in other nations. Canada has a lot of great publications as well. But really, we felt we still needed to put something together that was a little more complete and a little bit more user-friendly. So it is packed full of all kinds of different things, and we'll talk about why some of the pieces in there are important as we kind of go along. But that's the program that we put together. And we've been doing it in North Dakota now for 3 years, and we're actually seeing results where people, when we follow up with them a year later, they're having conversations. So that's the first step to succession planning, because if you're not talking, if the owner generation and the younger generation are not talking, then no succession plan is going to be created.
And I think you just identified that one of the key issues we have in North America is, farmers are going, you're getting audiences of 100, 150 farmers in a lot of meetings. Mm-hmm. And the question is, how many farmers go and they'll bring their kids, they'll bring the whole family. And then on Tuesday morning after, what has happened? Well, we just went to a meeting and drank coffee.
Yeah.
And not a lot said. There might be a few words said in the car on the way home. Mm-hmm. That's kind of encouraging, but 2 months later, what happened as a result of that meeting? And what's the average age of the succession planners? What's the average age? Like I'm in my 40s. early 40s a lot. And I was surprised when I got into this gig, I guess you'd say, as to how many farm families where the son and daughter are in their 40s and they haven't done succession planning. And at one time I thought that was freakish, but I would say that that's actually quite the norm these days. Would you not say that that's the case in what you've seen in folks contacting you with extension?
Absolutely. I think actually, I don't have the average age of the participants that have come to our program, but I know it's well over 40. It's probably closer to 60. And they're still coming because they don't have a succession plan. They know that they need to do one, but they don't have one. And so we're finding a lot of the older, the owner generations are coming to our programs. We are getting a handful of the successor generation as well. But really our participants are coming and they're well past the age that I think a succession plan should have been created. And I think had they done the succession planning when they were in their 50s with their children that are in their 30s, I think they all would have been happier. I think they all would have had a clearer path. They would have been aware the path that they wanted to go. I think there would have been a lot of hurt feelings that could have been avoided. So I think the sooner you start, the better. We do encourage, obviously, both generations to come to this class. And we do have many multiple family members that come, which is good. But a lot of times we're finding that, it's really one side or the other that's pushing the envelope. And that when they come, they're like, we really should have had the other generation here as well. And so it's good. We're making a difference. We are finding that they're actually moving in the right direction. And what, you were just discussing, you attend a meeting, you drink some coffee, you go home, nothing's said, right? I think farmers have to go to a lot of those meetings. They have to hear the message. They get really excited for that day and they might talk about it for a couple days, but then nothing's ever done. Because I don't feel like there's any homework that goes home, or if there is, it's not easy to find. You got to dig out your binder. You got to, so really the workbook is an important piece of our program because we want it to be on the counter staring at them so they don't just forget about the time that they put into this process. If you're going to dedicate 9 hours to coming to a meeting, to a workshop, we hope that they go home and do something with it. And so they really do. But those one-day meetings are valuable too, because not everyone is in a place to think about actually moving forward. Sometimes they got to hear the message multiple times in a way that's exciting or in a way that scares them into doing it, or, there's a bunch of different programs that are offered, and I think they're offered in a variety of ways and they're valuable. But this is like the next step. We hope that our program is the next step and it actually gets them doing it.
I'm amazed by how many guys have a fire insurance, but they don't have a farm succession plan.
I know.
And it's just, they look at it as soon as you do succession planning, well, you might as well have a foot in the grave.
So that brings up a really good point. Why don't people do it? I just had another conversation today with someone. We all know that talking about your mortality is scary. I mean, that's kind of I get that. But I think, I once watched an exercise where the older generation had to stay out of the conversation and the younger generation got to talk about what happened the day they died. Like it was an exercise where they talked about the fact that the farm was torn apart. Nothing was set up. The kids were fighting. The wife was crying. She was confused. She didn't know what to do. And that has been the only activity where talking about someone's mortality has actually made them think about the fact that their mortality in a different way, actually in a way that motivated them. But you really have to have a really special kind of facilitator to bring that up and to have that conversation. Because to say, now you're dead, don't say anything. Your kids and your spouse are now going to talk about what happens on the day and the weeks following your funeral. because you didn't have a succession plan. And that, I think, you know, if you really sit back and think about that, no one wants fighting and bickering and unclear direction. No one wants that.
And I think what guys don't understand is that, you know, that in order for you to die, you need 5 years of getting things ready. If you get hit by a Mack truck today, is your wisdom going to be transferred so the farmer's going to be managed successfully 15 years down the road?
Exactly.
It's just it's crazy. And this discussion about mortality, I mean, if you have health insurance, why don't you cancel your health insurance until you get your succession planning done? Really, because that's more important.
You're right.
Right? That's more important. But, you know, I mean, tell us, I just thought of that just now. I might use that in the future. But I mean, really, why would you have a health insurance? But if you fear mortality or getting sick, why, if you think that it's never going to happen, then why would you bother having health insurance?
Exactly. And really, at the end of the day, their farm is probably more important than their health to the vast majority of farmers and ranchers. And we're kind of getting off on a bad tangent here.
Well, but it's more important to the individual, right? I mean, what's more important to you? Is the farm being successful 15 years from now more important, or you having pain for 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Before you drop off. I mean,
exactly.
You know, we shouldn't say it that way, but it's true.
Kind of true.
I never thought of it that way. But anyways, you bring out you should be beside me every time I try to write a book. I mean, that's fantastic.
That would be fun.
Why do so what's encompassing your break down your succession planning modules? Because I really think that you broke it down quite well, actually.
Now, what did I do with my brochure? Okay. So our succession planning modules, this is a class, everybody comes to this class expecting us to give them the answers. They want to leave with what kind of trust they should have, what kind of buy-sell agreement they should have set up, or what kind of tax advantages or things that they should do for tax-wise. And we don't talk about that. Let's be honest, we don't cover that because that's not important. Honestly, at the end of the day, it's not important. What we talk about in this class, okay, maybe it's a little bit important, but if you never get through these first steps, those parts never get talked about at all. So what our modules cover is actually how to start your succession plan. So how do you start? What do you talk about? What do you need to figure out? What do you need to write down? How do you start your succession plan? Our next module kind of talks about what you want. So that's a little bit of visioning. You know, do you want this farm to be here in 15 years? Do you want it to be the same? Do you want it to be successful? Do you want it to go in this direction or that direction? Do you want it to be here for the grandkids or the great grandkids? So let's determine what you want. And I guess I kind of speak from the successor generation because that's the spot I'm in life. But I should say too, you know, the retiring generation needs to figure out what they want too. Are they going to be here? Are they going to go to Arizona for the winter? Because winters in North Dakota are kind of cold. So, you know, they got to determine what they want as well. So both generations, very important. The third module, we talk about developing the next generation and your legacy. So what about the farms that they don't have a successor identified? Well, how might they go about identifying a successor? Or even those families that have a successor identified, is that the best person? You know, let's be honest, people are people. They have their problems, they have their baggage. Maybe your successor that's kind of like the chosen obvious successor, maybe it's not, maybe they're not the best person. So how do you either train them up or mentor them or give them the axe? I mean, you got to think about that too. If you really want that farm to last into the next generation, maybe the successor you've chosen is not the best, or maybe they need some training. So we talk about that a little bit. We talk about how to hold a family meeting and how to have a nice conversation. And nice meaning You know, you can have feelings, you can get hot about issues, but you need to be able to talk about it respectfully. You need to let everybody's opinion be heard. You can't just assume. Don't make assumptions. That's kind of bad. So we talk about how to hold those family meetings. And I was listening to one of your other videos, and you and the speaker were kind of laughing. You know, Thanksgiving dinner, not the best time to be probably having, you know, the first family succession planning meeting. And then our last module actually addresses how to choose and work with professionals, because when you're all said and done, you've had the conversations, you've identified who should be involved, you've identified the vision for the farm, what you're gonna do, how you're gonna get there. Well, eventually you need someone to make the plan legal. You need to talk about the tax consequences. You need to do some of those things, but sometimes choosing those professionals can be a little tricky. You know, the state's attorney in your hometown, either they might know you too well, so you don't want to go to them, or maybe they don't have a ton of experience doing succession planning. So, you know, how to choose those professionals, I think, is pretty important too. And we also talk about what to avoid. So there's some professionals that you can go to that, you know, you walk in the door, they already have your plan. Well, if you walk in their door and they already have a plan for you without even talking to you, I would suggest finding a different professional, because they're not going to listen to you.
Totally agree with that.
So that's what our 5 modules cover. Because of the fact that people do want a little taste of some of that professional expertise, every site can has the option to bring in a local professional. So if they find that their audience has a ton of questions on taxes, they could bring in a local CPA. Or if their audience has a ton of questions about trust and they want to talk about that, they can, you know, they have the option to bring in someone can talk to the audience about that. Because even though I said that wasn't important, I mean, it is important, but we feel like how to have the conversations and what to talk about is most important. Because if you never get through that stuff, then the trust, whatever trust you set up, doesn't really matter. So, but we did listen to our audience. They wanted that a little bit. So we did put that back in our program, and it has been actually helpful.
And I've noticed that you haven't mentioned bringing in financial professionals, such as people who sell life insurance. Do you want to make a comment to that, or?
So when I say professionals, they're just kind of in there, but they don't come to my mind first. So, but they're definitely in there, because insurance is an important piece in some plans. You know, long-term care insurance, all that other life insurance, health insurance, you know, that's all important too. So I guess I just kind of lump them in with the professionals.
Yeah. You work for the state, so we can't have much of a conversation on this, but you know, if your succession plan is really getting a life insurance policy, it's not a succession strategy. Just for those people that you show that individual the garden, and
it can definitely be a piece of it.
It's definitely part of it, right?
It's not the only part.
Or could not. But I've quite often seen succession financial planners say that they'll deal with succession planning. I've had to go up to family farms and mediate family disputes, and they've already had 3-4 experts come out to the farm. Well, they just pull out the parents pull out the policies that they bought as a result of their succession planning. And yep. I remember one time it was almost an inch thick of how many insurance policies that this family had bought, because they had so many different problems over the years that they bought another package of products, and they still had these financial problems. But anyways, that's getting off topic. Tell us about what are the biggest problems that families have. How do you get unstuck? If you're give us a couple scenarios of families that you have come to you as an extension agent. And by the way, just before we get further on, you farm yourself with your family. Is that not correct? You want to explain to folks just you have an agriculture, you're not just an extension agent, you're a farmer yourself.
I am. And, I think that's maybe what drove me to being interested in this to begin with. I grew up on a farm. We had livestock, we had crops, and there has been no succession planning done there. So that's heartbreaking to watch a little bit. But I'm also involved now as I came home, got married, got married, then came home. But we also run livestock with my in-laws, and that's an ideal situation. They live right up the road. It's so perfect on so many avenues, because it does give me a lot of real good experience that I use in my job as an extension agent. And I've been an extension agent in North Dakota for 12 years, and really like the variety of work that I do as an extension agent. And, after doing just about, everything, you do horticulture, you do 4-H, you do community development, you do a ton of things, ton of different things. But in the last 7-8 years, I've really focused in on farm succession planning because I really like that field. There's a big need for it in North Dakota. And as I moved back to a very small community of very German-Russian people, and you find that a lot of them, well, communication is not our stronghold here, probably. So I think because of that and other reasons, because succession planning is hard and no one wants to talk about it, there's a big need in my community. There's a big need in the state, in the nation, really, for succession planning. So it's really been my niche, and I really like working in that area. I was actually able to become a certified farm succession coordinator about 4 years through the International Farm Transition Network with John Baker. And so that, I don't get to use that on a day-to-day basis as an extension agent, obviously, because I'm an extension agent first and foremost. But that training really did help broaden my ideas of what the role that a coordinator can play with farms and ranches. We really feel like if they give it a good effort, they probably attend those one-day trainings to get excited about succession planning and learn why they should do it. So they attend those, and then they ideally would attend, our Design Your Succession Plan program, and they would do all their homework at home, and then they would, go to the professionals. And that's really the ideal way we would see this going. But some families need a little bit more help, a little more coaching. So if they've given it a good effort, that's where I think the certified succession coordinator could come in to help the family along. And so let me back up again to your original question. So yes, I'm involved in agriculture. We raise livestock with my in-laws, and we don't have a succession plan either because it's hard. It's a hard subject to talk about. We've been home for 7 years, and sometimes I feel like we should have had one done yesterday, but it's a process. It takes people time to kind of digest, time to figure out, you got to figure out how you work together. The one thing that we do know about each other is that I brought them home 3 beautiful grandchildren. So, I'm already in there. But the succession planning part, it's a slow process. But really, because I have a background in agriculture, have seen some successful succession plans implemented. And then, as we kind of struggle towards creating one for my own family, I understand people and why they don't do it. I understand some of the struggles. I'm clearly a little bit more one-sided to the struggles of the successor generation. But I do recognize, that the owner generation struggles just as much. And speaking of generations, I think that's fundamentally sometimes why succession plans don't get created, because the generations communicate so much differently than each other. The people in their 60s, 70s, they communicate much, much differently than the people now in their 30s and 40s. It's a fundamental generational difference. It's just as fundamental and important to talk about as the difference between how men and women communicate.
I also think it's just simply the fact that, as farmers, the more successful you are as a farmer, the harder it is for you to communicate. That's because, what it takes to get things going and do things is a whole lot different than sitting around the campfire and talking about it.
Yeah.
And, I think a lot of families that, even where people are personable, actually, I find the farmers that are successful and also personable, when it comes down to the brass tacks, they have a really tough time communicating what they're actually thinking.
Mm-hmm.
What's a good example of a young farmer that did it right? I mean, you and I could spend hours talking about, situations that have gone bad. But what's a good example, just to close, of a young farmer who is in his, let's say, his early 30s, that had a really tough situation of getting the ball rolling, and how did they get that going without having to pull the ultimatum?
Good question.
I've seen guys put rocking chairs and couches in the back of their truck in order to get the succession plan conversation going.
I can think of a couple really good examples of succession of families that have created a succession plan, and I just have to say all of the families that I can think of, first and foremost, they have respect for each other and they communicate really well. The sons, daughters, they went away, they got an education, they were gone a little while, but they came back with some tools and some skills that the older generation really rely on now. Farming has changed. I just visited with someone today, and they mentioned that if the sons hadn't come home, Dad probably wouldn't know how to run the tractor, because the technology in the tractors nowadays, the GPS, the variable rate stuff, if he wanted to be successful, he had to probably implement that stuff. But if his sons hadn't come home to help him along with that, he probably wouldn't be as successful as he is today. He definitely probably wouldn't be as successful to be able to bring in, the next generation where they're all solely tied to the farm. So, and actually, they don't have an official succession plan, but they're going to be so much more successful, I think, than some, and they'll get there eventually because their communication skills and their respect for each other. I really think that those are two really key elements, and without either of those, I don't know if families are going to move forward very well.
And I would say your point about respect is so key. Like the families where I see the biggest problems with succession planning, an outsider would respect, quite a few situations, both generations, but they have, they've gone from a situation where they expected respect and they didn't get respect, or they misperceived not getting respect, and as a result showed a lot of disrespect. Mm-hmm. And in those situations, those families just go downhill so quick.
Yep. And I don't think they intentionally mean to disrespect each other, but if you are not listened to, if your ideas are shot down, if you're continually just not treated in a way that you feel is deserving, you're eventually going to display disrespect, whether you're doing it or not. And so I think the motivation to have these conversations sooner than later is so great, and it would avoid so many problems, because unless you're communicating, I don't think everyone's going to be on the same page, and the only the thing that's going to inevitably happen is disrespect, and you're going to shut down when they start talking. And I don't know how you're going to move forward after that. It takes a lot to move forward after that.
Crystal, we could spend a couple hours talking, and I'd really like to have you back on the show in a couple months or in a month's time, because I just enjoyed talking to you. And I think there's so much. Now, can you repeat how folks can get a hold of this workbook?
Absolutely.
How much does a course cost for folks that are in North Dakota?
Anyone can buy our workbooks. Actually, they're available. They will be available online like any day now. We are in the final stages of putting them online. I know where they'll be though, so that's good. The cost is going to be small. It's like $20, $30. I'm not sure, but it's actually a pretty small cost for the amount of material and the fact that if you would complete it, you would have a plan that you could kind of bring to the next step. But you can go on you will be able to go on that website any day now. And today is April 5th, 2017. So by the end of April 2017, you should be able to go online. And our website is www.ag.ndsu.edu/succession. And you should be able to go follow, you will go to our main succession planning website where we have some other information posted, and it will also direct you to the link where you can purchase the workbook. And then you can also find out where our upcoming workshops will be held, some of our impact reports, like what we're seeing as a result of people participating in this program, stuff like that. You'll also find a link to our certified succession coordinators in North Dakota. We have about 60 now that are certified. So if your family's finding that you need a little bit of extra help, there's some really good resources on there. So there's the workbook to get you started at home. There's the classes if you need some more information on how to use the workbook in the best way. And then there's some other professionals on there as well.
Well, that sounds awesome. And what's your phone number so folks can contact you directly? What's that? Folks
can contact me directly anytime. I'm in the extension office here in McIntosh County in North Dakota, but my direct number is 701-288-5180. And again, that's 701-288-5180. And that's where you can find me during working hours. And then again, that website is our NDSU extension website. So if you just Google really NDSU extension, succession planning, you will come up with our website, which is www.ag.ndsu.edu/succession. And you will find our workbook and a number of other resources.
I think that's awesome. Crystal, I really appreciate you being on the show. And I really encourage everybody to buy that book. It's for $20. I mean, I think, or whatever. I think it sounds like a really interesting book. I'm going to buy it myself. And so thanks for being with me, us. And this has been the Business Culture of Agriculture. My name is Andy Junkin. We have a live show every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Central Standard Time. And you can get past video clips at agriculturestrategy.com/page TV. You take care and God bless.